Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch, previously known as the Small Church Podcast. I'm Tony Marr, and with me is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everyone, we're glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and talk about real life stuff of ministry, faith, community, and maybe a little sports and pop culture.
Yeah, if you're expecting a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
We're more about those honest heart-to-heart conversations, like the ones you'd have on the front porch with friends. Sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes we take the scenic route.
That's half the fun, isn't it? Here we tackle the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of church and of life. Every now and then, we'll welcome a few friends to the front porch and share stories and ideas that might just change the way that you see things.
So whether you're a pastor, a church leader, or just someone who loves the church, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. We've got a seat waiting for you.
We're on the road today.
We are. Like, this should be a road show. We should have an audience. We actually have chairs for them and everything.
There's nobody here.
There's no one here.
There's probably no one listening either.
It would be weird if there was somebody here, because like we don't usually have service at the church on Wednesday mornings.
How would you feel about doing our show in front of a live studio audience?
It'd be fun. There's a few podcasts I listen to that they do some live shows every now and then, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it and think it's great.
So if you told a joke and then you had someone chime in with a...
Yeah, I don't know that I'm that funny, though. That we could probably hold up some cards and get applause. I think it would be fun to do live Q&A.
Yeah, that would be fun.
That would be the fun part of it. So...
It's a raucous crowd today. They're loving the start of this show already.
Yeah, you should be here. So you have not accepted my friend request on Instagram, and I try and send you stuff occasionally, and it's usually about the Dodgers.
I don't know I didn't know that you had friend requests on Instagram.
You have it blocked where people can't follow you. They have to request it. And so when you go into Instagram, there's a little heart up at the top next to the Reels thing. And when you scroll down through, you see people who have friended you. But I saw one the other day that I was going to send you, and it didn't go through. This is the stuff we talk about, people like Tony ignoring me in real life. But
I still don't know how to find. Oh, I've got several requests here.
But there was a whole thing about, and you may have seen this, about the All-Star game this year. Did you see that one pop up?
The NBA All-Star game?
No. MLB. Dodgers.
No, I haven't seen this. That the Dodgers are just have it be the Dodgers against the world?
Yes, it really was. It was Dodgers against 29 other teams. And I thought that was funny.
I have no idea how to accept your friend request. I don't see a friend request. I'm not very fluent in the Instagrams. I have no clue what's going on here. You'll have to give me a tutorial later.
But anyway, yeah, so that one was funny. There was something else too. I don't remember now.
Hey, so it is Super Bowl week.
It is Super Bowl week.
We'll timestamp our show a little bit here.
We're the worst at podcasting, because I think there's two types of shows. I think there's people that are timeless, and there's people that are time stamped. And we, from the beginning, have been a timestamp show.
Yeah, which is difficult when this episode won't air for probably 3-4 weeks from when we record it. Yeah. You know that one of my I don't even know how you would stand-up comedy albums. That's not it. But one of my storytelling albums is called Timeless. It's all about baseball.
Is it you sitting behind a piano with a candelabra?
You've heard it?
Tony Marr in Timeless. And that would be it right there. I'm in.
So Super Bowl week has been hijacked by the NBA.
That is hilarious, isn't it?
It's so great. I love it.
You and I both like pretty much all sports. I mean, I don't know how much rugby you sit around and watch and things like that.
If it's on.
Yeah, that's kind of where we are. We'll find things. Okay, so
I actually have a niece who plays college rugby, and we go a couple times a year and watch her play.
That's awesome. So I'm going to totally hijack this for a second, and then we'll come right back. when you're watching ESPN, do you ever watch the Ocho?
So, yes, just recently. I didn't even know that it existed. And then I stumbled upon it a couple of weeks ago.
So there's fun things like wiffle ball. Like that is absolutely a blast. You get really talented people playing. There's weird rules and stuff like that, but they play wiffle ball. And
have you been to the
awesome.
wiffle ball place in
Kingsport?
In Gray.
Is it Gray?
In Gray,
yeah.
Right behind Hales Chapel.
I have not been, but I've seen it.
It is phenomenal.
That is really cool. We need to rent that out and go play over there.
Just the two of us.
Yeah, me and you. I was thinking more like the student ministry of the church, and then you and I could go as chaperones and kind of do that. But like the thing that me and two of my boys got,
I'm picturing you and I just on the wiffle ball field,
soft tossing.
I'm bringing heat with the wiffle ball.
The thing that we got locked into a few weeks ago, and like we were picking, like, and then the third boy showed up from practice that he was at. And so we're all sitting there, and there's 4 people at a time, and we're all choosing our horse that is going to do this. And they're climbing slippery steps. It's like a blow up inflatable. There's people standing on the sides throwing dodgeballs at you, and there's like these 2 girls up at the top with little squirt guns. Those little, like, you pull it back, looks like a pencil. You pull it back and squirt it down. And they've got Dawn dish detergent, and they're just spraying it on. And like, as you're climbing up, they're yanking each other down and doing all this stuff. And they're climbing these steps. And like, we got so into this. But then the one that I saw the other day that I'm still not quite sure, they had an air guitar competition. And on the air guitar competition, they had one segment. So they had a bunch of rounds. So one of the rounds had a time on it. And if you were going to think about a hip hop artist that would be a great timekeeper, who would you think of?
A hip hop artist that
older,
would be a
much
good
older
timekeeper?
Yeah, maybe they wore a clock.
Oh, Flavor Flav?
They brought Flavor Flav out, put him on a throne on the side of the thing, holding one of his big clocks around his neck. And he is literally like watching these like people roll around on the floor and like play air guitar and like the things they're doing. I'm like, that's not even a guitar motion. Like air guitar is supposed to resemble real guitar. And like they punished the people who did good stuff and rewarded the people. And it was so bad. And the lady that won was not the best by far. But at the end, the guy that was the better person, he did something that just kind of cost him like 1/10 of a point with one of the judges. And they tied, and they went to a crowd roar is how they decided. Go ahead. Yeah. It said it was much loud. It was, rah! Like just this great roar of people. And they got to this point, and because the lady, she was like, her name was Jeannie Mom Jeans or something like that. She was handing out snacks as she came down the aisle into the thing, like into the ring, the arena. She came in like a wrestler from outside, ran down the aisle and was handing out snacks, and she won their affection handing out snacks. And 20 minutes later, I'm going, what is wrong with my life? What have I done that this is?
And we sucked you in.
This was lunch, man. Like we sat down. I was eating lunch at home that day, and we sat down over lunch, and we're just like, what's going on here? We're like, we don't know, but we can't look away. I mean, like it is just that kind of. It was bad.
So we live in an instant gratification society,
yes,
right?
We do.
Where anything you want, you can have it right now. When we grew up, we didn't have streaming services. No. And so if you had a show that you liked, you watched it at Thursday at 8, and then you had to wait. If it ended on a cliffhanger, you had to wait an entire 7 days for it to come on again.
And then they usually gave a cliffhanger. You had to wait an entire summer for something crazy to do as well.
And that's not our world anymore. my son Camden and I have been watching, and Isaac's been watching a little bit, but he's been kind of watching it on his own, and then we talk about it later. We are hooked. Like you had 20 minutes. We are hooked on this Mr. Beast show, Beast Games.
Yes.
And
my boys are watching it. I catch an episode here and there.
And it's the same thing. It ends. It's like, we've got to wait till next Thursday for the next episode. How are we going to make it? How can I need it to be on now to know what happens. And it's a great lesson in social skills and social studies and, oh man, interpersonal communications. It's intense.
It is. And it's a very weird kind of game. And are y'all caught up?
Oh yeah. We're caught up.
The last episode, the one where they had to hang from the bar.
Yeah.
Was it not insane that the one team didn't choose the guy
who does that for a living?
Yes, yeah. The rock climbs.
Like all he does for a living is hang from bars.
He's like, but I loved his thing. It's like, I rock climb all the time. Look at the calluses on my hand. I'm going, I don't know. Like I could have calluses from playing guitar. I mean, I don't know that that's like the thing that you, but anyway, it was just,
and
really,
then the other
really
guy
funny.
Says, when I was in the 7th grade, I did the presidential fitness test and I could do 7 pull-ups. You should choose me. It's like, you're the one.
When I saw this opportunity, I was watching Survivor and I started training and I'm going, what a ridiculous thing to do. Like, this whole team went home because this guy, and then they walk off to the side to have a conversation. And he's like, let me pray, Lord, and I'm going, like, what a weird place to be in. And do so anyway, I was kind of bummed out, but
so I've got to ask you've seen the show, and for our listeners, it's a game show.
It's on Amazon,
listeners who haven't
Amazon
seen
Prime.
It's a game show that this guy that I was not familiar with, but all of my kids were. Mr. Beast. He's the most popular YouTuber in the world. Mm-hmm. He's broken all sorts of records for most watched videos. And he does these games, I guess, where you win stuff. And so he put over 1,000 people, and the winner gets 5 million, last one standing 5 million. And he's done a couple of things where he basically tempts you, bribes you to leave the game. And they did one earlier where they had 4 people up, and they were each responsible for a section of people. So I think each one had, like 150 people that had elected them as their captain. And he put them up and he offered them money. He said, if you will hit your button, you will get $1 million right now, but everyone on your team is eliminated from the game. And I'm sitting there with my son and saying, what would you do? I'm like, man, I'm hitting that button. That's $1 million right there. But then there becomes this kind of moral dilemma, because they chose you for that role, because they elected that person their captain because they thought that they had character and integrity and would not hit the button no matter what the cost was. But at the end of the day, it's a game.
That's what I was going to say. It's a game. And like, how do you hold someone accountable to, because you watch, I think any of these things, go back, Survivor was kind of the original one of these things, I believe. Then it's like season 872 right now. But
Jeff Probst.
Yeah, that dude, what a genius. I don't think that the singing competitions really land the same way, but
if you watch this, then I'm sorry, but what is behind The Masked Singer?
Oh my goodness. I haven't watched it in a while. And my family actually got it. I watched maybe the first season, and they hung with it until about 3 seasons ago, and they kind of bailed on it.
I watched 15 minutes of one episode.
It was absolutely terrible. But like Big Brother, and you could go on and on and on with these types of shows. I loved
The Amazing Race.
That's a really good one. But there's also some, and that's one too that might be a little unique, because you don't really, you can put some penalty on somebody, but it's not like you walk in and they go hit a buzzer and you send somebody home. There is not really as much gameplay in The Amazing Race as there is in shows like there are social experiments that are put into very different places. Survivor chose an island, Big Brother chose a house. And you start to think about those types of setups and things. And of course it's evolved into Love Island and all these other things. And there's been a million, the Bachelor, and all these different shows. I mean, there's just this whole different approach to so many things in that. But it's a game. And at that point in time, I'm playing a game. And because here's the other thing I'm looking at too. If they take the $1 million, they don't go home. They get to stay in the game.
Yeah.
Could you imagine looking at 3 other people? Call it 500 people in the game or whatever. And you've got, like you said, 125 people 124 people, I guess, that are under your care. And it's you and 3 other people. And you're like, guys, here's the deal. We all slap this button. 496 people go home. And it's the 4 of us just at each other's throats for the rest of a competition for $5 million. I'm pitching that all day long to go and do that. And I wouldn't feel bad. I mean, like, you're there typically to help your family or to, provide a different life for somebody, a friend, or
it's been amazing how personal people have taken it.
Yes.
And immediately they'd been there like 3 hours and people are sobbing and crying and curled up in a corner because they're going home and it's so brutal. And
which is the whole thing about the bar, pull-up bar thing where they had just to hang on a bar there. Like, why would you not choose a person? Why would you get manipulated into choosing someone who isn't as good? But hey, so Super Bowl, we'll do this and then we'll get into something.
Well, first off, before we go to Super Bowl, I want to ask you, how do you think you and I would do if we were a team on The Amazing Race?
Oh, are you scared of heights?
I am scared of heights.
We would struggle in that challenge. And we both have a little bit of a weird palate as well. Both of us are a little bit picky with foods. You eat a little more than I do.
I don't know that that's true at all.
Okay, maybe it's not. But yeah, so I think we, like, as far as like intelligence, navigation, working the situations, puzzles, that kind of stuff, I don't think either one of our egos are too big that we would try and take over something that the other one would be better at. I think we would do really well in that. I think the struggle would come down to anything with heights and anything that was really weird food. Because we both are musical, we both have a little bit of coordination. We could learn dance routines, because they're not looking for you to be, a professional dance squad. I mean, they're just looking for you to do the basic motions in the right direction. And I think we could do all of that. It's just more we're both athletic. We like sports. If we hit a sports thing, there's a lot of things we like and do. We both like games. I mean, yeah. So I think it would be interesting. But if food and heights would get us.
The food one would be tough. I do not like heights at all. They really bother me. But there have been, probably 25 seasons of The Amazing Race. I don't think anybody has died yet on it. And so I think you would have the assurance of that I could probably psych myself up to say, I'm going to do this, just get it over with. The food thing, maybe not.
Yeah, you still got to swallow so you would
have to take all the food
that
stuff.
Weird slimy thing or whatever.
I couldn't watch that show Fear Factor that used to be out.
Oh, it was so weird.
Because
Joe Rogan?
I couldn't. That was Joe Rogan that hosted that thing.
That dude has exploded.
He's come a long way.
He has. Did they pull him back in for some Fear Factor stuff recently? I don't know.
Are they still making that show?
I thought they came back with it at some point in time, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something different. But
how would you do on Survivor?
I don't do well with stupid people and bullies. And so I would end up losing my cool and getting voted off pretty quickly. I'm not good enough to be like, you go back to throughout the years, there's always that one person that wins, that like they just win every challenge because they want to. And so I'm not good enough to be that guy. And I would, like, the one person who's just starting to manipulate everybody, I would want to punch them in their throat. And I think that would probably get me disqualified.
Would you be able to mentally and emotionally separate to say this is just a game, and so I'm going to understand that I'm playing a different game than the rest of these people who are emotionally getting too invested into this relationally, and be able to just say it's a game. I have to play the game and separate from that.
I'm going to say I feel like
you could just say that from here, right?
I feel like you could. I feel like that's part of your. I feel like I am so emotional that I would struggle with that. Do you agree?
Maybe, yeah.
But am I right with you that
Oh,
you
yeah.
could?
For me, I don't.
Be like,
there'd be no problem with that. For me, I think with Survivor, the issue would be that there have been many episodes where they've had to airlift people off of it because they've fallen into the fire or they've developed some flesh-eating bacteria or something. And I'd be like, there really is a chance that I could lose a leg or something like that from this. There have been many times that people have had to leave the show for physical issues.
When you think about those three, which I think all three of those are CBS shows, Amazing Race, Survivor, and Big Brother. You think about those three
Never
shows.
seen Big Brother.
We watched in the beginning, Melissa and I really it's hard to think about this. Like Survivor came out in like 2000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so 25 years, 2 or 3 seasons a year. We're sitting like where we're sitting right now. We are a block and a half from a runner-up in Survivor. Gavin Whitson, who was on the show and like several seasons ago now. He was runner-up. He lives just a block and a half from where we're sitting. And so he's a great dude. He spent a lot of time, anytime my boys want to ask questions, they're just like, he's like, yeah, I'd love to talk about it and stuff. But those are 3 very different shows. And Big Brother is like the social experiment where it feels like Love Island meets Survivor. It's in a house. It's a lot more intimate and personal. Survivor, you're on an island. You can get a little bit of space and you don't have to live so like right in everybody's face and stuff, but you're functioning as a team. Big Brother functions, I don't know, in a very different way. Amazing Race is just a unique game. And so I just went blank on the guy who, Mark Burnett. I think he did all 3 of those shows, and he's just really, really good at those types of things. And I'm trying to think, was it Erwin McManus that I heard that was buddies with him and just talking about Mark's faith and stuff? And it was really cool. So, I mean, he's created some really interesting shows, these great social experiments that I think people like us have leveraged for years. And, I'm kind of done with all the reality shows, though. I can't think of any reality show.
This Mr. Beast is the last one, the first one that I've watched in
my boys love Mr. Beast, and so I've watched a few episodes with them, and so it's always interesting to hear what they think. But yeah, so
all right, Super Bowl.
I'm a Cowboys fan. I think I've said this before. If the Eagles, Commanders, and Giants could go 15 or 13-4 every year, I would be thrilled. I don't even want them to beat each other, tie. I wish they could lose every game they played. But I'm kind of pulling for Jalen Hurts.
Are you really?
I'm a Bama guy. I mean, it's one of those things. Saquon is an interesting guy to me. I feel like he paid his dues. He was very loyal in New York, and it wasn't anything malicious. He didn't leave like stomping out, throwing a fit. Definitely not anything like what just happened in the NBA with Luka and AD, which I think, like, from the interviews, it's like LeBron's still trying to get his head around this. Luka was in tears at the Lakers conference. I don't know how well this is really going to go. This could be very, very bad, and Luka does not have to sign the max with the Lakers. I mean, I think he's going to finish a year or two, and then he may bolt. I don't know.
I don't know. I really think with the comments, and I'm a huge Lakers fan.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. And that's part of why I said that. By the way, so I'm picking Eagles. Who are you picking?
I haven't decided yet.
I'm not overly thrilled about the game, though. It's fine.
I think I'm leaning Chiefs.
I like dynasties, so I love this kind of stuff. I loved it when the Patriots were there all the time. All of those things were super interesting to me. I loved it when they kept beating my Braves. I loved it when the Yankees were there, though. I like the fact that, like, I think sports are better when there is a team that everyone else is trying to catch. And it's just all the hate in the world. The Braves were that team a couple years ago. It felt like you could not catch up to what they were doing, and then they just didn't perform, which has kind of been the Braves MO. That they get a really, really good team, everybody goes, oh man, and then they just fall apart. Health and things like that just are not there, and they're not going to spend the way that a Dodgers, Yankees, Lakers spend on something. But I think the league's better that way. But It's going to be fun.
Something I want to ask you. We talked several weeks ago about the way that Jerry Jones had treated Mike McCarthy and the fact that he said that he's open to talk to any team that he wants. And then literally 24 hours later, a team requested to interview from the head coaching position and he refused, said no. And that was kind of where things were at when we talked before a couple of weeks ago. Since then, he did not re-sign McCarthy as his coach. He signed someone else that it appears that he signed them because he can have control over him. And the opening press conference was one of the craziest things that I've ever seen, where he introduced him, that it was all Jerry talking about Jerry. And even when Schottenheimer talked about losing his dad and how much of an influence his dad was, then Jerry needed to interrupt and say, well, I lost my dad too 40 years ago, and talk about how much it hurt him losing his dad. It was one of the most bizarre things that I've ever seen in a sports interview press conference like that. What are your thoughts as a Cowboys fan on the way that all went down?
So I literally sat with a buddy of mine yesterday who's a Cowboys fan. We're about the same age, and we were just talking. And I said, okay, like we had a couple things we were meeting about and just kind of going through some life stuff and things. And I said, okay, before we get started, Cowboys. He's like, man, and I said, so you're still a fan? He said, I don't even know that I am. And I feel that same way. And it's interesting to hear people say that. Like, I've kind of been at a point where I'm going, which is honestly why I can pull for the Eagles a little bit this time. 2 years ago, I would not have pulled for the Eagles because I felt like there was some hope. I guess of something. The reality comes down to as well is that Jerry, my friend mentioned, I haven't seen the show Landman yet. It's a Paramount show, Billy Bob Thornton, and apparently Jerry Jones is in the show, and he has a scene at the end of it that my buddy was telling me about where they're sitting there talking, and he said, when I bought the Cowboys, he's like, they were talking about family and all these things. He said, I bought the Cowboys so that I could live life with my family, and we run this together. And he's basically telling Billy Bob, no, it's another guy's character. He's telling him that you got to prioritize your family. And like, it's a great scene. Like, I want to go watch at least that scene now and do that. But in this whole space, we had Deion's name pop up. Pete Carroll came back. I didn't really, honestly, when everything happened, I didn't even think about Pete Carroll being an option of that. But I've got a son who's a Seahawks fan. You're a Seahawks fan, and I love Pete.
Yeah, I'm in a really rough predicament because I've been a Seahawks fan. He's my favorite coach.
Southern Cal,
gave SC a couple national championships, led the Seahawks to their only championship, and now he's the head coach of the team in my hometown.
In your hometown,
yeah. So I'm really, my allegiance is wavering right now. I'll always be a Seahawks fan, but I actually have a Las Vegas Raiders t-shirt, and I'm gonna wear that a little bit more now, not just to the gym.
I have waited. So to finish, like we had Deion. Pete Carroll came into the conversation. Let's not forget Bill Belichick. Let's also not forget two unbelievable coaches with the Detroit Lions that both have picked up head coaching jobs, and they are going to radically change those organizations. And because of an inability to get past an ego, I don't care. I mean, it's his team, his beach, his ocean, but I don't have to be I don't have to live on his beach. I don't have to vacation there. And that's kind of the thing. I've kind of been almost in this window with pro sports. Like, I have no problem being an Alabama fan. I don't sit around and go, oh man, like, I don't keep up with high school players. I mean, if one of my kids got recruited to go play at Tennessee, go Vols. I just don't care that much. You would struggle with some of the things I'm saying right now. Like, if, your favorite team is Southern Cal, and all of a sudden one of your kids get drafted to, Stanford, and, yay, they got a scholarship. Yay, they're going to be playing. I said recruited, not drafted. But like you're not going to want. You're still going to be like the dude from the original Mighty Ducks wearing the other jersey off in the corner and kind of cheering for the wrong thing. I'm joking. You wouldn't be that guy, but you would be less.
The only thing I would have a real difficult time with is if one of my boys was playing for the baseball team that's in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
That would be tough.
The name that shall not be spoken. So I've almost been looking for a way that I could just pull for Alabama players in the NFL. Like, I literally would love to have a jersey for every Alabama player in the NFL right now. And I'm at a point where I could almost do that. So I have pulled for the Cowboys since I could walk. My dad, it was the Redskins back then. It's the Commanders now. My dad used to kind of joke he got the wrong baby at the hospital. He was a Redskins fan. And I'm definitely I'm a Cowboys fan. When Danny White was quarterback and punter, I have pulled for this team. I have watched, I have been through. It has just, I have loved every second of it. I love the star. I love that team. And I'm at a point right now watching what we just went through that I'm going, I don't know. I think my buddy said it best. He said, will I watch a game if I just happen to be at home and they're the game on? Yeah. What am I going to be like, hey, we got to hustle home on Thursday night because it's the game on Amazon? He said no. And that's where I was this season already. I didn't prioritize any Cowboys games. And Cowboys would be on and we would watch another game because I didn't care. And it wasn't like the other game we were watching. We have 4 different teams we pull for in my house. And none of those other 3 teams were even playing. I would just watch other games because I would rather watch that than I would what the Cowboys were doing. So that's a long explanation it's just really sad. Teams lose, and I'm okay with that. That's life. One team every year. It's like when I was doing photography and the Raiders photographer, his name's Tony Gonzalez. He looked at me. Didn't look at me. We were talking on the phone, but he said to me one day, he just said, Robert, there are 32 people on the planet that have my job. And he said, and actually it's not even that many because a lot of teams don't even have this point in time, probably 7 years ago. He said this like every team doesn't even have a full-time photographer. Like at that point in time, the Titans didn't. They've since hired Donald, who is unbelievable. Dude's crazy talented. He was at UT for a while. He's an incredible photographer. But there are 32 people on the planet that have that job. There are 32 teams. There are 1 that gets the Super Bowl every year. Everyone else is a loser. Like, and we were in the Super Bowl. You still lost. You got the exact same thing that we got. Like nothing. You got to go home a loser. And so I understand that. And teams lose. And I just that bad of leadership bothers me. And but again, his beach, his ocean. I don't get to call that. Do you have anything you want to add to my?
I was just very disappointed in it. And it's his team. He bought the team. He said that he bought the team so that he could have control of the team because he wanted to do it.
He didn't buy a hobby. He bought a job. Yep.
And he has the right as the sole owner of the Dallas Cowboys to do whatever he wants. I just think the way that he treated Mike McCarthy and all of that showed a lot about who he was. If you knew that you weren't going to hire him, why take away his ability to go out and get another job? I want to talk to you for a minute about loyalty. How important is loyalty to you?
I am such a hard person to ask that question because I still have my Blockbuster card. Like I lament things like if you go to Blockbuster, I've said this on the show before. If you go to blockbuster.com, like it says, please be patient. We're rewinding your movie. And I'm like, what are you rewinding? I just need to know. I'll pay whatever. It's like, I'll give you money every month, even for nothing. I just love Blockbuster. Send me VHS tapes. I still have a VCR player. And so I'm typically in my life, Coke, never Pepsi. I'm we went and saw some Christmas lights with you guys, and we went to Weigel's, which, if you're not from here, is a gas station.
Great gas station.
It is. It's so good. It's like my second favorite one behind Buc-ee's, and
my second favorite one behind 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
and it's better than 7-Eleven. It's better than 7-Eleven.
I haven't been to a 7-Eleven in so long I couldn't speak to that, but we went in and it was Christmas time. We'd all been out. Our family's been out looking at Christmas lights together. And we ran by Weigel's to get some hot chocolate inspired by you all. And the Weigel's is a free gift at times. And they had a week-long free things because of Christmas. And it was a Pepsi. And growing up, my mom's family drank Pepsi. And we were having my aunt's ham that my uncle, on my mom's side, they made this ham every year at Christmas, and I got a Pepsi, and it's literally probably, and because it's just very nostalgic for me.
You felt dirty?
No, it was very nostalgic for me. Like eating that ham, drinking a Pepsi over the next couple of days with that, like it was very nostalgic for me. But it's the only Pepsi I've probably had in a decade. I probably drink a Pepsi just because it's the only thing. And I don't drink a ton of soft drinks. I know you don't drink them at all. I will drink one on occasion now. Thanksgiving, it had been 2.5 years since I'd had a soft drink. And since Thanksgiving, I might have had 8, just at a restaurant or something like that. But I'm super loyal in things. Like the teams I pull for, I have pulled for them for years. It's just something where I'm literally, my boys call it Gran Torinoing. I don't know if that's a real thing, but I'm the grumpy old man sitting with the shotgun on the front porch going, stop pulling for players. Just pick a team, be loyal to somebody. And so I have pulled for my teams for years. It's been good that all my teams have won, many of them more recent than not. But it's something that I'm incredibly loyal. And I don't even have to ask you this question. Like anybody that's listened to this show for more than half an episode, like you're like, when it comes to your teams and your people.
Yeah. For me, it goes way beyond sports. It's a way of life. And
yes.
So much so that at one time, I had someone who was in leadership in my church that was part of, you would say board of elders, the big bosses tell me, Tony, loyalty is very important to you, isn't it? I said, of course it is. They said, I think it's to a fault with you. And I've still never, that was 15 years ago, and I've still never really reconciled that comment. And I've thought about going back to them and saying, let's play this out a little bit more. You told me that my belief in loyalty was a fault of mine, but it's something that's very important to me. And there are two things that have happened in the sports world this past week that have really impacted loyalty. One was that you mentioned before, that my wife woke me up at 12:35 a.m. on Friday night / Saturday morning to break the news that Luka Doncic had been traded to the Lakers for Anthony Davis. And when she woke me up and said, Tony, wake up. Luka's been traded to the Lakers for AD. And I said, no, he hasn't. Let me go back to sleep. That's not true. And she said, no, it's true. And it was true. And if you look at, he held his introductory press conference with the Lakers yesterday, and he talked a lot about loyalty. And you could tell he was very hurt, very wounded by what happened. He had 4 days before the trade, he had closed on a $15 million house in Dallas. And he planned to be there the rest of his life. He never thought he was going to leave. He was completely blindsided by it. And he actually brought up, he said, I guess loyalty is not a thing anymore, is what he said in his press conference with the Lakers. And then on the other side of that, you have that you mentioned Bill Belichick. The University of North Carolina has announced that they are leaving the ACC for the Big Ten. And I mean, North Carolina is the ACC. How North Carolina and Duke are the ACC, and how can you leave a conference that you are synonymous with? Where is the loyalty? Where is the tradition? Where is the history? And I don't know what's happening in our world anymore.
One of the things that was interesting inside of the Luka AD trade, that when you get to a leadership level of talking about these types of things, Jay Williams, point guard from
Duke.
Played for the Bulls for a bunch of years and
10 points in 56 seconds.
And I love his brain. He is such a good sports guy. I mean, he is so good, and not just basketball. He is a great sports guy. And he was talking through some of these things, and he said the shift you are seeing in the NBA right now reflects the NFL. It is an owner-driven league, not a player-driven league. And you are watching owners claw back to get control at a level where LeBron, and he said you go to the NFL, and he said, there's a lot more players in the NFL. You go to the NFL, and there are 5 players, maybe a handful of players that have enough pull that they can sway what an owner says and does. He said that is not the case in the NBA. And I think
there's one. Two. I think there's 2 in the NBA.
Who would be your second?
2. LeBron and Steph.
That's a really interesting thought. And we'll pull this around to some like more practical leadership stuff here in a minute. But that's an interesting thought, because I would say 4 years ago, yes to Steph. I would say right now, I don't think he does.
It was just in the news this week that the Warriors were looking at trading for Jimmy Butler, and Steph said, no, I don't want him.
Well, he can. I mean, it's also easy to say when Jimmy's saying, I won't sign with you. Like Jimmy said a week ago that they can get me. I won't re-sign with them.
On my way driving in here today, was listening to Sports Talk Radio, and they said that the word from all of the Shams and Wojnarowski and all the NBA guys is that the Warriors are calling on everybody to see if anyone's there, because they want to put someone by Steph to finish his career, to give him a chance to win another championship.
Yeah, and I saw a post on that yesterday. It was crazy. Like Jaylen Brown was in that, and it really. I was going, come on now, let's not blow up the Celtics right now. I think it's interesting though. We have both seen this. I have seen church leaders. I'm trying to think if I'm guilty of this. You talk about dad goggles and stuff like that when it comes to your kids with whatever it is, not just sports, but acting, music, dance, intelligence, whatever. You talk about like parent goggles, and I think dads get usually the brunt of that when it comes to sports. It seems like we're probably a touch more intense and things, but I'm trying not to have dad goggles about myself about like, hey, did I do this? But we have both seen leaders throughout to the fault of the organization, kind of like you were talking a second ago. I mean, of just keeping someone around or restructuring things to pull someone in because it was their person, their kid, their buddy, and they wanted a job and they created a job. And it literally, from the moment it started, you could see the downfall. You could see the struggle. You could see the tension. And I think there's got to be 2 conversations about loyalty. Is like, what is loyalty when it comes to a sports team or to some things like that? And then what is loyalty when it comes, like you said, it's a way of life for you. Like it encompasses literally. I can't think of anything like you're very loyal to like a burger joint. Like when we talk about what's the favorite burger joint and stuff, like you'll stomp the press down and be like, it's this one. And
In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah. I mean, and hey, the donut place over in, Vegas or wherever, the place to get the cake, like all of those things, it's definitively, this is the best. I will eat that one. It's nowhere near as good. And the tension comes, how many things do we do that with that we haven't had that in 20 years and we don't even know if it tastes the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the struggle comes.
I had that with In-N-Out Burger, that it had been a decade since I'd had In-N-Out. And the first time that I went back out west after about a decade and sat down to have a double-double, I was scared. I was nervous. Like, okay, have I built this up so much to everyone around me? And I'm sitting with my wife, Amanda, getting ready. We landed in Las Vegas. Our plane landed at 11 p.m., which is 2 a.m. for us here. By the time we got through rental car and all of that, it was like 12:30 Vegas time, which is 3:30 for us on the East Coast.
And you're getting a burger.
And we went straight to In-N-Out. And I was so nervous, like butterflies, because I had built this up for so long. And like, is she going to like it? Am I even going to like it? And then I took that first bite and it was heaven. Well, I said, oh yeah, hurry up and take that bite.
And I think that's one of the things that there's a funny episode of How I Met Your Mother where it's like they're chasing down the best burger in New York, and Regis Philbin's in it. So it's a really funny episode. But I think that's the thing, is that so many times, like, I have fond memories of Gatorade when I was a kid. Like a glass bottle. When it was glass bottle, yeah. Like 5, I think it was 5, I said 3. I think it was 5 ingredients.
When you would turn the lid and it would
pop, and 3 to 5 ingredients and stuff. And now it is like 30. And when you taste it, it's like, this isn't what I used to have. And the reality comes, like, do we sit inside as leaders sometimes a situation so heavily that we're looking at Sunday morning, small groups, the organization that we work, if we're bivocational and we're running our insurance office, or we're at Lowe's, or whatever it is, do we sit inside of our organization, our leadership, our situation, our moment, our thing so much that we still think that it's 40 years ago, but it's actually become this diluted, a lot of bad ingredients. We've moved from glass to plastic, that it's this whole thing that we think it's something it's not, in an effort of being loyal and faithful to something that we think is great. We've got these blinders on that we just can't see.
I think that's a great point. How often then, as an organization, do we need to do a self-assessment and look at ourselves and saying, have we drifted? It's mission drift, that it doesn't happen overnight, that you have your mission, you have your purpose as an organization, as a church, or whatever organization you're working with. And you don't just all of a sudden take a right when you are heading left. It drifts. It slowly fades and you get off course just a little bit to where it's not even noticeable, but you have a little drift there, a little drift there. And before you know it, you're going a completely different direction than you intended to, even wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, you and I know we talk about so much stuff, and I think we said this before. It's just the 1% or 1 degree. I mean, you're sailing a ship, you get 1 degree off. It doesn't feel that much, but and so 6 months down the road, 1 degree didn't change a whole lot. 6 years down the road, you're starting to go, how did we get here? And maybe not even that long. I mean, with people, and you talk about social experiments, and I'm not saying the church is a social experiment, but you talk about a group of people who come together and think you're working.
The church is a social experiment.
It
sure is.
Yeah. I mean, you're working through emotions and feelings, and everybody's got different thoughts and ideas. Some people would press the button and never think about it. Some people would sit and struggle. Some people would never press the button and be like, I don't care if I lose. I would rather give all of them money and I'll get nothing. I would rather go home than to have that level of character. And I think those are the tensions that we sit inside of that. It's that 1 degree. And it's just like we talk about, like, how do you get 1% better? Like, that's been a challenge to me and my staff this year. 2025, what's it look like for you to get 1% better, like, each month? I'm not even talking about every day. I would love to see that every day. I'd love to see it every week. But what about each month? What's the one thing that you can address inside of your leadership, your job description, your thing, that you could get 1% better each month? And imagine if you were 12% better. Because that's the thing. We look at things as like, oh, what's 1% in the big picture? What does it mean to put one this, one that aside? But we so overestimate what we can do in a day, and we underestimate what we can do in a year. And you think about if you can only be at 100%, and if you're already at 55, you went from 55 to 65, 67% in 1 year. You do that again the next year, you're at almost 80%. Most leaders come where we're close to functioning at 80%. And I think that's the struggle and the tension when I think about loyalty. And I kind of tied in some other words there, but to get back just to loyalty, well, there was some redneck loyalty. I think that's the whole thing is like, what are we supposed to be loyal to? And, for me, that tension always sits. I know for you as well, is like, how am I loyal and faithful to God, his kingdom, what he's called me to be as a follower of Christ? And how do I be sensitive to the Holy Spirit?
And to the mission. And so how often should your church evaluate, reassess where you're at and what you're doing?
Tell me again, and because I've heard a couple, and I like how you say it, when you talk about personal evaluation, that we should do daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. What's your rattle? What do you rattle off? We should divert daily or like weekly. You're gonna be like, now, like, Robert, you did this in like one of our episodes probably a couple months ago now, and you just talked about like when it comes to like our journey, this is divert daily, which comes down to our quiet time and like spending time with the Father and resting in that. Like we need to withdraw weekly. We need to take an hour every week. We need to like something monthly, where we get like a half a day every month that we kind of get away. And then you actually said you recommend twice a year, but you realize most people can't do that, especially bivocational people, that you take it a minimum a Friday, you find some deacon or somebody who can preach on Sunday, and you take a minimum of a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you go rent a hotel in town. You send your family off to go visit the grandparents, and you stay at your house, whatever you've got to do. But you would recommend a week twice a year, but you would admit a minimum, say you've got to get a weekend, 3 days, 2 to 3 days where you are disconnected from all the things around to do spiritual renewal and self-evaluation. I would think there is some level of that. I would not do daily. I would not do weekly. I think that gets to be too deep in the weeds and you start trying to make too many changes and things too fast. I would say every 6 months you should, I'd say every quarter you should do an assessment of where you are as an individual, as a leader. And probably every 6 months you should sit with your staff. And one of those 6 months, you probably should sit down with your elders, your leadership team, and have those conversations. I'm really fortunate. I say this all the time. Incredibly fortunate to have you. Well, I mean, stuff no one would ever know. I mean, we literally spent 2.5 hours talking through personal, emotional, mental, church stuff, that just some things that I'm going through right now. And I'm doing some check-ins, and I'm just willing to be honest about some stuff about, hey, I'm trying to grow in this area, or, hey, this seems to have me off a little bit. But I'm incredibly blessed to have you in that space, but we talk a lot of church ministry. I'm also really fortunate, and I don't say this, and I say this often, and I realize I do. I'm not saying this to like brag or anything like that, but I'm really fortunate to be a part of a network. Yeah. I mean, I've texted all morning with a group of guys that care greatly about me, my family, this church, as far as the building, the house, and the impact that it has as the church in this community. And that is not something that's lost to me. And so I think it's probably quarterly, individually, twice a year as a larger, sitting with your staff at least, whether those are volunteer staff, paid staff. And then I would say once every 6 months with your staff, and then the other 6 months, I would probably pull in at least your lead deacon alongside your staff and just say, hey, where's that at? But you should be meeting monthly, or at least quarterly, with your deacons and leadership and stuff as well, and having a lot of communication with them and things. What about you? What's your thought about how often people should evaluate to kind of make sure that loyalty isn't overriding mission?
I do think that it's a daily, weekly, monthly, annually thing. I do. And I look at in every area of life, I think that's a key. One of the big things that my wife and I are working on is establishing rhythms in that within our relationship, that we want to have a daily check-in. How's your heart today? How are you feeling today? And that's a daily thing. And then a weekly time that's a little bit more intense. That daily thing is, 15-minute conversation. That's how are you today? How is your day today? And it's not just telling you the details, but how's your heart today? How did I do at loving you today? How could I have loved you better today? And how could I love you better tomorrow? It's something that we're trying to be really intentional about, a daily check-in with each other on how we're doing. But then
you guys are intense about your weekly. I mean, because you'd kind of gotten there. I mean, like, yeah, it's not important what day, because I won't hand that out to people in case they start trying to track you down. But like, there is a day a week that, like, including your kids, like, it would require something incredibly important for you guys to walk away, because what you understand is the oxygen,
we don't miss our date night.
The oxygen on yourself before everyone else. And if you're not healthy, it doesn't matter how much you're trying to make everyone else healthy. Yeah. No. And I love that about what you guys do.
Yeah. And when I was leading staff, there was the same type of thing, that every single day that I was in the office, it was a just leaning against their door, knocking on their office door and opening it up and saying, hey, how are you doing today? A daily check on how are you? Anything that I can help you with, anything I could be praying for today. And then we had weekly staff meetings, and it got to be a joke. My staff in one of the churches that I wasn't the lead pastor for, but I was the associate, the number 2 guy, and led the staff meetings, that the staff joked and wanted to get T-shirts with this that we did. We started the staff meeting the same way every single week for the years that I was there. Every single week, we went around the table and said, what was something great that happened this week? Tell us a God story this week, something great that happened. And where do you need to see God this next week? Where do you need him to show up? And it was, where do I see God and where do I need to see God? Every single week, what can we celebrate and what can we pray for? And nothing else happened until that was done. So you had the daily, and then you had the weekly, and then I had monthly one-on-ones with each of my staff that were more intense. They were deeper. That happened monthly. Had weekly, we were talking about this before the show, had weekly leadership team meetings that were more for prayer and accountability with my team of guys that we met every Tuesday at 6 a.m. at a coffee shop. But then we had monthly business meetings, that talked about the business side of things. And then we had the yearly retreats. We did a yearly staff retreat and a yearly leadership retreat that were, as a staff, let's assess what our goals were for this year, where we're going, how are we doing on that, and what are our goals for the coming year. And then same thing with the leadership that happened after the staff, because we really let the staff kind of drive that, and then leadership kind of, almost rubber stamp it for where the church was going as a whole. But I think that so many organizations, if you're not intentional, a week turns into a month turns into a year turns into 5 years. And the number of churches that I've had the honor to sit down with and lead through strategy sessions and say, when's the last time that you've done this? And there's no one sitting around that table that can ever remember a time when they've sat and really looked and said, who are we as a church? What do we want to be? What do we want to do? What are we trying to be? What are we called to be? What's the unique makeup of the leadership that we have and the people that we have here that makes us different from every other church? And how can we leverage that to reach this community and reach people with the gospel? And the number of times that I'll ask those questions and people say, oh, we've never had those conversations, at least not while I'm here. And that wasn't intentional. At some point in time, someone said we need to reassess and reevaluate the things that we're doing, but you just get that 1 degree off. And then, like I said, a week turns into a month turns into a year turns into 5 years. And then it becomes a part of your culture that we don't evaluate. And I think what happens then is then you get a leader in place who's a lot like Jerry Jones that says, this is my thing. We're going to do what I want to do and however I want to do it. And there's no other voices that are looking at it from the outside and saying, how can we do what's best for the organization as a whole and not just what's best for you as an individual?
Well, and I guess two things there. One, I think with the Jerry Jones analogy at the end of that, which, I mean, Tony, that's incredible, like add in. And you may have even shifted my thinking on part of that. I think with the Jerry thing, like you take an organization and, you know, we're talking to church leaders typically. So you take a church where vision values you haven't been loyal to what the vision, mission, and values are for such a long time. Then a new leader comes in, nothing malicious. A pastor, a leader, somebody stepped out, somebody else came in, whether that's the lead deacon, lead elder, the head of the leadership team, or it's a new pastor. And they come in and I didn't take this as a hobby. I'm very passionate about the things I'm doing, but because I'm passionate and none of the rest of you all seem to be that passionate, I'm going to lead this and I'm going to pull this forward. And it's not anything malicious. It's just that things got so distracted for so long that when somebody new came in with that personality, everybody else went, well, this is just kind of what it is. The person in that chair does their thing and the rest of us just go along. And so like my other thing that I was thinking when you were talking there is that leads to the place where loyalty is great and it's actually incredibly valuable when it comes to so many things in life. We can laugh about sports teams, our family, which we won't laugh about. But it also is incredibly important inside of the church. But it's more about the mission, not the sacred cows.
Yeah, and I think that it's greatly lacking in a lot of churches that will be devoted to our sports teams. My wife gets really attached to players. I get really attached to players, but especially with baseball, it's been well chronicled on this show how deep fans we are of the Dodgers. And she follows all of the players on social media and knows their spouses, knows their kids, knows their dogs' names, and sees everything that they're doing.
She's like Melissa. Tim Tebow and his wife are pregnant. We were sitting at the table today, and Melissa went, "Oh my goodness, I'm so excited!" We're like, "What in the?" I mean, it was like way more intense than what I just said. And she's showing pictures, and me and all the boys, like all 5 of us, are at the table, and we're like, "What in the world? Like, who is this?" She's like, "It's Tim Tebow," and we're like, are you kidding me? Like, we looked away from the Mentalist to like say attention to Tim Tebow. We don't care. She's like that with the Dodgers player.
Yeah, she is. And
what happens when one of those players gets
it's heartbreaking. When someone gets traded, it's heartbreaking. And she continues to follow them, continues to love them. But when Justin Turner gets traded to the Red Sox,
what is he to signs, you?
Oh, I still like him, but I'm like, you're gone now. You're gone now. Yeah, you're the enemy now. She still loves Justin Turner. She still loves Cody Bellinger, but she's not going and getting a Red Sox jersey. She's still a Dodger fan.
Yeah.
She loves these people, but she's still loyal to the Dodgers. We're loyal to the Dodgers. And I think so often in the church, we will die for our sports teams. In our area here, we've got people Tennessee football, yeah. And it doesn't matter who the coach is, it doesn't matter who the players are, it doesn't matter what the record is. We're loyal to that team,
and we never miss a game.
Never miss a game.
And right now it's really tough because Tennessee is so good at football, basketball, and baseball. They're incredibly good.
Yeah. But in the church,
all 3 of them.
You get a pastor, a head coach. I'm doing air quotes there, and I hate air quotes.
I love air quotes.
You get a pastor in that you don't like. Well, I'm going to another team.
Yeah,
I'm going. You have something happens that you don't like a play call that's made on one Sunday, a bad worship song or a bad sermon series. You don't like the play call, and I'm switching teams. I'm changing my T-shirt. I'm changing my loyalty to another team right down the road. And I think that loyalty is something that hasn't carried over into the church for a lot of people.
And one of the things you said there that had me thinking, because going back to my original statement when you said, hey, how are you around the whole Jones thing and Cowboys and stuff like that? And I said, I'm at a point where I just don't care, because the leadership has taken things to a place that I'm at a point where I will pull for, really, I hate to say it this way, the enemy. Now, I'm not saying people are going and pulling for Satan. Like, I'm not saying that at all. And I'm also not saying other churches are enemies. Sometimes sports and church analogies break down. And this is a point where, like, you've got to stick with me for just a second. But this is a leadership problem, not a fan problem. And I know Kyle Idleman wrote, we're not a fan, we're followers. So again, hang with me. Some of the tensions that you might be experiencing inside of your church, some of the tensions you might be experiencing inside of your leadership team might be a you problem, that you're too loyal to yourself and what you think should be happening, not a membership.
Well, we've
problem.
had this discussion before, Robert. What are valid reasons for someone to leave a church?
Yeah.
There are valid reasons. And anytime someone's asked me that, I've said, I think there are a few valid reasons that it is okay for you to leave a church. I think there are valid reasons that it's okay for you as a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan to say, I'm abandoning the Cowboys.
As much as you hate the Cowboys, it's much easier for you to say that.
Yeah. But if you simply just do not agree with the direction, the vision, the mission of the church, okay, that it has been established by the leadership of the church, if you simply just are not on board with the overall direction of the church, the mission, the values of the church, then I think that it's okay for you to say, I probably need to find a church that better aligns.
Melissa and I, one time we were at a church, and it was in a season where we were doing ministry as like parachurch type thing. And we were attending this church, and they were making a decision to purchase a new building. They were kind of moving buildings and things like that. And we were struggling because we didn't feel like it was a good decision. And I remember the night we were sitting at the house, and I looked at her and I said, we either have to get on board with this or we need to leave. And she's like, well, I don't want to leave. I said, then we need to be on board, because we have known these leaders for some time. And we either have to trust that they have actually prayed about this, that they have done their job, and we have to walk in and be 100% behind it, or we need to go somewhere else and never speak of this again. So either way, we're done talking about this. It just determines, do we show up and sit in that pew on Sunday or this pew on Sunday? And so I love what you're saying there in the fact of that. Yeah, I think you're making a bad, and I still look back at that. And when I talk to that leadership, sometimes I'll go, we talked about it. I'd still struggle with that particular decision, but I've never said that outside of a leadership room. I've never said that outside of my house, and I didn't drag my boys into it. I didn't drag my family in. We didn't sit around and talk about it. We made a decision based on, we felt like at that point in time, and still have a little bit of that feeling, it was an unwise decision based on where the organization was. But we said, we trust the people who are leading. They've led us towards the Father every week that we show up here. Our kids are growing in a relationship with Jesus. They're building our family closer together. We see engagement in the community. We're seeing people come to know Christ. We're seeing people baptized. We're seeing people discipled. We are seeing the things that the Bible cares about, that God cares about, done. So we're going to shut up and we're going to stay. But I think you're absolutely right. So that's one reason.
That's one. I think there's three. That's one. The second one is if you simply just do not trust the leadership of the church.
Yeah.
If you don't trust them, go somewhere else.
So that situation we were in was a very different space. If I didn't trust the 6 or 8 leaders that were over the organization at that moment in time.
And then the third one is if there's not an opportunity for you to serve and use your gifts there. That a lot of times people would say, well, there's not. Well, have you tried? But I've also been in places where people have said, I've tried, and I've actually led in churches before where I've had someone come and say, here's what I want to do. Here's the gifts that I have. And they were things that they were right. They were good things. I said that really doesn't fit in with the mission of our church and what we're doing. And he said, it may be best for you to go somewhere else that will let you do that and has the resources and the capabilities and the vision behind that. That's not where we're at as a church. And so I think if you are not able to serve and use your gifts in that church to expand the kingdom of God, then go and find a place where you can.
Do you ever look at that from your perspective? Because I think you have a couple of things that are a little deeper than me. And by that, what I mean is like your skill set inside of a couple of things, a little deeper than mine. But you also have an incredibly wide skill set. Like on some level, there is not a ministry at the church that you could not do. This may sound arrogant, at least as high of a level, or if not higher than the vast majority of people who would do that. You could lead in student ministry well. You may not.
I could not lead in children's ministry. Okay, at all. There's no way I could do that.
It's like I always say, like I'm incredibly.
I could do it. I'd just be really bad at that.
I'm incredibly wide, like, and that's the thing is like I play. I mean, basically any instrument on stage that you would have at a church on a Sunday morning, for the most part, I can play any of them except drums. I can sing, I can lead, I can play bass, I can play rhythm, guitar, I can play piano, or keys, whatever. I mean, like there is a level that I can do all of those things. I can lead inside of student ministry. I can build relationships. I can lead in small group ministry. I can teach from the main stage. I can run sound in PowerPoint. I can be a door greeter. I can make coffee. And you're a lot the same way. And so sometimes I forget the fact that there's people who are really, 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 really good at being a door greeter, and I'm just okay at it. And when a church doesn't have that, and I'm using that as a very just fluff example, I forget sometimes that because I have a lot of skill sets that are very wide, and I've been able to do ministry for pushing 30 years now, I forget that there are moments that what you said is a true thing, that people don't get to use their skill sets and talents. And God has gifted them. And he makes it very clear in scriptures that he's given us all. And everybody's not an eyeball. What good would it do if all we could do is see, but we couldn't smell or taste or hear or touch? Yeah. And I think that's such a big deal. So that's really good. Now, this has been an interesting conversation, especially starting where we did. And we got nowhere that we planned on going today. No, we talked about a couple of things today, and we had a couple of scripts, and this is definitely a little different than what was planned. But like, if I can just be like super vulnerable for a second, like some of the things we've talked about today probably came from some of the conversation we were having right before this. Definitely. And the thing is, I don't know who sits on the other side. Literally, there's like 5 different platforms you can listen to podcasts on now. Like we get updates that says that like there's, I don't know, 1,500 to 2,000 of you all that listen throughout a 30-day period that we get to kind of hear, or I guess weekly-ish. I mean, that kind of listen, like 1,500 people a week that listen to this thing. And we say this all the time. But if you're sitting there going, oh my goodness, like I just can't catch traction, like I've been loyal to the wrong thing, like whatever, like I promise you, whatever you're thinking, that's a spot that I'm in right now. That's a place that my life is. It is something, nothing malicious. I'm not jumping off any roofs or anything like that. It's just, I've noticed some gaps in some ministry and in my leadership. And if you're going, man, I don't know how to get to the next step, I promise you, like there's somebody around who wants to help you. And if you don't have somebody that you can sit across the table from, like reach out to us, because I think, 1, Tony's unbelievable. And 2, I'm so aware of these things right now. We would love to be a voice. And that's something you can email and reach out to us, and we'll schedule a time and just talk and just be a voice that you can kind of push those things through. This is life. This isn't football, and this isn't like things that we enjoy doing on the weekend. Like it's incredibly frustrating as a leader when you spend 6 days to get ready for one, And that day doesn't mean as much to everybody else as it means to you.
Yeah, it's tough.
And
do that over and over and over
52
and
times
over
a
and
year,
over and
year
over
after
again.
yes. And so we kind of talked about it and we laugh about it and things like that. But like, we're not the only place that has a really good football team an hour and a half down the road. And like I said, right now, it's literally, I mean, they've got 3 coaches that are like world beaters. I mean, it's football, and the women's basketball team is back now. I mean, you take football, both basketball teams, baseball, softball team's always good. I mean, there's a lot of like things that people in our area are very committed, because it's a day trip down, watch a game, come home. And they get home late and it's tiring, and so they don't come the next morning. And they don't even have to go to the game. Sometimes just eyes up late watching it, and they don't come back. And I feel those things way deeper than I should. And so like, just in that space, like, when you're loyal to the wrong thing, when you're loyal to how many butts are in seats on a Sunday, when you're loyal to the things that maybe aren't the best measuring metric, it can start to create some stuff in your brain and in your heart that really gets you going, man, how do I keep doing this? And some of this stuff is things from years. Some of these things I'm going through personally now. But like, this is a step that if you can find the way to connect in and do to what matters, and just start having better conversations with your leaders, I think it could change everything.
I think the key, Robert, for you and for our listeners who may be asking some of the same questions, and it's elementary, but it comes back to having a clear understanding, not only in your head, but making that 8-inch journey down into your heart, that your loyalty is not to the people who come on Sunday. Your loyalty is to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so often that can be skewed, and we can forget that.
And we say this all the time. It's easier said than done. And it's the truth. I mean, in that, like, honestly, like, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they're talking about the scriptures, and they're like, the scriptures are actually really hard to navigate. And I'm going, are they? I mean, or is it just that we're so selfish? We have a hard time just obeying what the Father says, what God gives us in that. And so I don't know. They're probably right. And I'm probably right. There's probably a little bit in the middle somewhere of what it is. But like, I think that's the thing, is that it's easier said than done. And so giving yourself some grace, but you can't give yourself grace to be lazy. You got to give yourself grace to move in the right direction.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's about all the time that we've got for today.
And that's what happens, boys and girls, when you spend your time making fun at the beginning of a podcast. You tab over to the wrong sound effects tab.
All right. That is all the time that we have for this edition of the Pulpit and Porch. We want to thank you for traveling this journey with us today as we are on the road, that we took a detour even within the conversation that we thought that we were going to have. We want to encourage you to follow the Pulpit and Porch podcast. You can find us on Instagram and on the Facebooks. And I don't know if we're on any other social medias at this point in time. Robert's shaking his head no, so that's going to be a no on that. But maybe you can look for us there in the future. You can also find us at higherministries.com, where you can reach out and find out more. And if you would like to reach out and continue this discussion with us, either through email, on social media, or in person, you can find us there at higherministries.com. or on those social media platforms. We do want to encourage you to like the Pulpit and Porch podcast, subscribe to the Pulpit and Porch podcast, and share the Pulpit and Porch podcast. Until next week, we hope that you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll talk to you soon.